Hello, my name is Tom Ream. I'd like to welcome you all to the first session of the WPA Wicked Problem Approach Skills Training Series. The Wicked Problem Approach has been used to determine the best approaches to take for seemingly intractable problems. In the 1990s, Dr. Dick Hutchinson and colleagues used the Wicked Problem Approach to determine the best approaches for U.S. chemical weapons treaty verification and preparations for U.S. cities to respond to biological terrorist attacks, all very complex with respect to technical and societal issues. In this series of 5 two-hour sessions, Dr. Dick Hutchinson will train facilitators to lead problem-solving teams using the Wicked Problem Approach. Thank you for attending session number 1. I'll turn it over to you, Dick.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Tom. And I would like to repeat our appreciation for all of you to sign up for this training. It represents a considerable commitment of your time, and we're humbled that you're taking the time to do this. Our first session here, we're actually combining, it's normally 6 sessions, but because we had this Wicked Problem Approach orientation, and that took a lot of the slides out of the session 1, we're going to combine the 2 sessions today, and then next time we'll go right into session 3. We thought about going around and doing introductions, but it would just take too long. So what I'm going to do is ask if you would mind providing a short bio. And after this session, I'll email out kind of an outline for a short bio that you can use if you find it convenient. And then if you just email them back, we'll consolidate them and then share it with all of you that are signed up. And this will be helpful to us, particularly when we get to the end of the course and we get your evaluations, and we'd really like to know, how those evaluations sort of jive with your background, because probably different backgrounds will have different observations. Okay, so this is part 1 of this session 1, and there were a few slides relative to the course overview that I wanted to go through again with you. Touching again on wicked problems and why are they wicked? What's the main one I think really is you can't solve them in a series of pre-planned steps. This is essentially the basis of engineering. People get trained into how to design a bridge, and they get experienced, and when they have a new bridge to design, they go through a series of steps. They modify those steps depending on situations, but nonetheless, it's a series of steps, whether it's a bridge or a chemical plant or a space mission. Often with wicked problems, the beginning and end points are ill-defined. They're not, you cannot just say, well, here's the beginning, we work on that and work our way through. Not necessarily. They're almost always systems problems in that any kind of a solution is going to have to be a system of solutions that interacts successfully with the very many and diverse elements of the wicked problem. All these things are together are main reasons why these have been termed wicked problems. Now, one of the things that we've come to in this wicked problem approach is that really the problem-solving environment is really key to it. In other words, the interrelationship between the participants. We find it's best, even if participants are hired, to essentially treat them as volunteers so that everybody is treated on an equal basis, and there's no bosses, no top-down. We do need facilitators, and facilitators are that. They really are helpers. They are leaders, but they help the process and the people working on it to be successful. Another thing, and this is just the way it's been so far from our perspective, very often the type of wicked problems there's an element of rendering a service. In other words, because they're so broad and touch so many avenues, very often solving those problems provides a much broader service. And that kind of philosophy that, you're doing this for a general good is a very useful perspective and a motivator for people. And we find that certainly that's the case on global warming. In this problem-solving environment, although we don't want bosses, we really encourage leadership. And we find that we may have people working in this on a problem that really had no leadership experience per se. They did not lead teams per se. And but yet we find that many of these people can step in and take on leadership positions and do very well. So we encourage that. And in terms of having an environment that people work best in, we find that the environment, the fundamental basis is of truth-based environment. We're after truth-based problem solving, and truth is something that we all honor kind of as a natural human instinct. There needs to be compromise because these problems do not have one specific solution that solves everything. You have to balance different aspects of the problem. So you need compromise. And the last is a goodwill between the participants. We don't want shouting matches. We want people to feel respected and work as equals. And those are the atmosphere where people do best. And that's what we're trying to get at here, is to have people do their very best. Well, the essence of this approach is that it really is applying basic skills in project management. It's problem solving as opposed to open-ended research. We're trying to go from point A to point B, some sort of a defined solution or endpoint. And we want to put blinders on and go into points C, F, and Z. We don't want to wander off in those, even though they might be very interesting. We're also following a disciplined approach in this. The same applies for team leadership. It's pretty much normal engineering team leadership. It doesn't tend to be very much directed leadership because it's usually amongst teams of professionals and people tend to treat each other as equals. But the leadership purpose really is to focus the effort, focus the people, motivate them, and provide the support, and reinforce the environment that we talked about, and encourage creativity. We're not trying to find solutions that are sort of canned and have been always necessarily sort of the norm. There probably is no norm for wicked problems. And so creativity is actually a key piece of solving such problems. But we apply these two, project management and team leadership, in a unique way for wicked problems. And that's what we'll, of course, delve into through the course. Well, what we're trying to accomplish in essence is to tap the full human potential. Now, I know that's a rather nebulous term, but and we will touch on this from different aspects as we go through the course, and it will be important, I think, to truly understand what we're about, to get a feel for what we mean by this and how we can tap the full human potential. Well, the benefits of this approach, as we see it, well, first is to actually obtain some solutions to wicked problems, which may not otherwise ever come to fruition. But we feel we get superior solutions, and that's through taking a very truth-based, unbiased approach and doing very thorough analysis on the different elements of the problem and then putting those together. And the other key benefit is that you never really understand a problem until you try to solve it. And so the people that are involved are deeply involved in solving it, and they become very informed, uniquely informed people relative to this issue. And so they are in a position to help implement the solution. So it's really an investment, not just in the initial effort, but it's an investment in people who will carry on to actually solve the problem with the solutions that's developed. Last time I did comment on this book by Professor Senji at MIT called The Fifth Discipline, The Art and Practice of a Learning Organization. And as we wrote up our paper, which I'm going to share with you after this session, one of the reviewers said, well, what you've come up with sounds a lot like this learning organization of Senji. So we got the book and we read it, and we found that what he did was take corporate leaders from some in the early 90s, very key successful US corporations. And these were corporate executives, vice presidents, CEOs. And they worked hard. They met and they brainstormed and they said, well, what is it we're doing that's contributing to our success? And they boiled this down into a number of disciplines. And when we read those, we find that those disciplines are very much embedded in our wicked problem approach. In other words, we both came up with the same sort of thing to tap into this full human potential. And that's what we're really tapping into. It's not that they had a methodology in terms of their corporate structure, it was the environment and the emphasis that they placed on learning and creativity. Now, since then, and other comments I got from reviewers was, well, what about this approach? What about that problem-solving approach? So we purchased quite a few books. We read about these other approaches enough to try to get an understanding. And what we found was, at least at that time, and this was in around the year 2000, was that most of these approaches seem to depend on some sort of a methodology. In other words, you did this step and that step and went through this analysis and that. You kind of cranked the handle and came out the other end with some solutions to problems that you were interested in. But we found that our approach was, the main difference was that we don't use a methodology per se. We're really tapping back into this human potential. And I still think that's the main difference. Now, I'm not a student of these other approaches. There's a lot of them out there, and there are others that are claim to be able to solve wicked problems, and they may very well, but I'm not familiar with them. I can't discuss them with you. If there's only, the human potential is universal. We didn't create it or anything like that. So I would expect that other people that have been working in this area are probably finding those same human potentials and probably have other, include them in their work. But what I did, rather than try to exploit this wicked problem approach by setting up courses and charging people, what I wanted to do was to test it in different avenues to see, is this thing really work? Is there really something here as we thought there was? So that's what I've done, and that's why we're bringing it to you today. And I'm proposing it to be used on this global warming problem. Well, in terms of our course outline, you've really heard the overview in our orientation and the discussion on what do we mean by wicked problems. This session 2, we're going to focus on the wicked problem approach, the steps in it, and particularly a problem diagram, creating a problem diagram. I was going to end it with, we normally have potential. We touch on that. But because we combined the first and second, I thought it was going to get too long. So we put that in. That'll be in the first part of session 3. Then in session 3, we want to focus in on the project management aspects of this approach and the planning. In session 4, it's the team leadership, the problem-solving team. And then session 5 is actually performing the problem-solving effort using the teams and how that plays out. And 6 is kind of a wrap-up for anything that's left over, as well as final reports and follow-up work from actually using the approach. So this is kind of the flow of what we anticipate. Now, in terms of, well, what do we hope to accomplish? Well, our goal is to provide each of you both with the ability and with the confidence to actually use this wicked problem approach to take on wicked problems, whether they be technical problems or social political problems, whether they be inside or outside your career field. As long as you're willing to learn, most anybody can apply this approach to a very diverse group of problems. Essentially, the skills to lead and focus volunteers to use this approach. We'll do our best to try to impart those skills with you, and we appreciate your signing up to give it a try. Now, what we have built in work on an example wicked problem as part of the course. In fact, it's key to the course. The only way you can, or the best way to learn this, is to actually work on it, to try it out. So this student involvement is really necessary if you're going to get what you need out of this course to actually use the approach. And another comment is that this, learning this wicked problem approach is perhaps somewhat of a wicked problem in itself. And one of the main reasons is that a lot of the aspects of this approach are implicit, like the aspect of full human potential. And what are those potentials? Well, they're implicit in us. They're not written, they're not written down so much. We just do it. So trying to deal with that aspect of it is somewhat difficult, at least to do that successfully. The other thing is that the different pieces of this approach, they need to all fit together. Well, you can't teach them all at the same time. You have to go from one piece to another piece to another piece sequentially. And so we have to rely that during this process, you will start to put these pieces together and see how this thing as a whole fits together. So we will repeat ourselves some with the purpose of giving you another chance to think about this aspect or that aspect and see it in perhaps a little different light as we're proceeding from one session to another. So that's really kind of wraps up the session 1, the few extra slides that we wanted to go over with you. So now we're into session 2, and this is focusing on the facilitator training and the approach itself. Now, we did put the steps in the previous orientation, but they're so important that we need to go through them now and then relate to them as to, all right, where are we? What are we doing here in terms of the course? Well, we said that really the step 1 was really to identify the problem facilitators in the team. Well, we have this problem facilitators right here. That's all of you. You'll be the ones role playing the facilitators as part of this course. And just again to touch on the general responsibilities of facilitators, they are key in actually planning and ongoing coordination of the effort. If as part of the effort there needs to be arrangements of meetings or site visits or guests or various forms to learn about the problem, then problem facilitators will be involved in setting those up. And then recruiting team members, team participants. Well, there's no one else out there to do that other than the facilitator. So that's another role. And as we go along, we're going to need interim reports. And the purpose of them is to ongoing to share the results with everybody working on the team. In other words, we're going to normally have various sub-teams, and each sub-team, at least periodically, needs to know what the other sub-teams are coming up with, so that everybody can start to see what are the pieces and can start to think how to fit these together. And then there's the final report. So the facilitators, which don't write all of this from scratch, but they pull it together, pull contributions from other team members. Now the participants, and this can include to some extent the facilitators, but I might add that facilitators need to do facilitation as their first priority. If they have time left over, they might actually help in some of the problem solving efforts. But if they get too involved in problem solving and drop the ball on facilitation, those other groups will suffer because they simply won't have the ongoing support and care that's needed. So as far as participants, we do like a mix of ages, genders, knowledge, skills, because these problems require attack from many different directions and different knowledge bases. It's important that the participants, as well as the facilitators, be unbiased on this particular wicked problem that they're working on. In other words, this is not a political action group trying to achieve some political goal that the members all agree on. This is a honest, unbiased problem-solving effort, and everyone working on it has to approach it from that basis. Just how to actually deal with that is a little touchy. Part of it is that we certainly need to reach agreement with everybody as you're recruiting. You ask them, you have a special bias on this. You explain that we can't have biases. If you have biases, you're going to have to put it aside and be totally open-minded. If they can do that, fine. I've had people say, well, we were working on a school issue here in town, and a lady said, well, I just have this biases against this school system. I don't think I should be on this because I just already have bias. So people will be honest with you. The working as equals is another given to have agreement on as recruiting. And it doesn't help to enforce the fact, to inform them of the fact that this does require self-control and commitment. In other words, we're talking about real work. This is not just sitting around, brains thrashing around and talking about a problem. This is actually working on the problem. And some people, you don't hear from them again when you explain the work issue with it. Well, the problem diagram, we went over this before, but we're just about to really get going on this part of the issue. And I want to go through it again because we want to brainstorm one of these diagrams, start today on an example problem. So as we mentioned before, there's we start off with the goals, the study goal and an end state goal. So the study goal is what the problem-solving team hopes to accomplish through their effort. The end state goal answers the question, well, if we accomplish that study goal, so what? What does that accomplish in a broader sense? And since these are usually very broad problems, there is always a broader sense to what is the benefit of solving a wicked problem. So the first goal is what we are committed to try to accomplish, and the end state goal is if we are successful, what does that do in the broader sense? So that gives us kind of a two-level orientation on what we're trying to accomplish. Then we start off by looking at what we call problem elements. These are gaps and barriers, things that stand in our way to accomplish the study goal. We've then further broken that up into technical elements, economic elements, and social political elements, so that we don't lose track of the fact that there's probably social political aspects of this that we can't just sweep under the rug and ignore. The same for economics. Economics is broader than just cost. Cost is certainly a key of it for different options, but there may be much broader economic implications of one option versus another, and so it must be dealt with in a broad sense. Global warming, we're looking at national economics, international economics, even global economics. I mean, it's all going to be tied together. The technical is pretty much everything else, which includes technical, includes anything that we physically have to do in order to reach the study goal. So you see what we're doing. We're forcing ourselves to tear this problem apart and try to identify the technical, economic, and social political. The more we can break it up, the better off we are in tackling the different pieces, because we can't tackle the whole thing when it's snarled up like this. Then for each of these problem elements, we try to identify, well, what do we do about that to overcome that particular barrier, whether it's a gap, whether it's some kind of technical impediment that's unique to that problem. What do we do to overcome it? So this is the statement of work in essence, because this is what we're actually going to do as the problem-solving team in order to reach this study goal. And again, we break that up into the three categories so that we have the technical work units solving the various technical gaps, the same for economic and social political. So we've really taken this problem and divided it up into 6 different pieces as a start. Well, now who would normally draft the problem diagram? Well, in a sense, you'd like the whole team to brainstorm it, but you generally don't have the whole team together at the point that a few people are starting to work on this problem. You have to have a couple of people that are going to serve as facilitators to start to initiate some kind of an effort. I guess you could say that Tom and I were examples of this relative to our program proposal to you. So normally some group of facilitators starts to draft the problem diagram. Then as people are brought on board through volunteers or hiring, then they review this problem diagram. They go into it in more depth, and the diagram gets updated and refined. So it's an ongoing process during this startup of the effort. If this effort's being done in response to, say, town officials who set up a local problem-solving group and then give them assignment, would you please work on this problem? Well, then when you have the problem diagram, it only makes sense you take it to them for their review and see if this looks like it's going to satisfy their anticipations, get their go ahead. And then we need to update this problem diagram as the effort proceeds. We may find that in our first cut, starting effort with the problem diagram, we've left out something that's really key. Well, we're going to have to include it. We'll have to set up a new team, whatever it takes to address the problem as thoroughly as we can. And all the key elements of this problem, we'll update the diagram and the effort. Now, other things we might have included in there, we may find, yeah, this is really irrelevant. We don't have to worry about this. Well, then we drop it out. But we need to keep this problem diagram current because it's really our key way of focusing everybody on what it is we're doing, what's our end goal, and how we approaching getting there. Okay, and then step 3 was the identify these events. In other words, this is now starting to actually plan the effort. If we need events, investigations, whatever it is, working up an overall schedule. Again, this is kind of the project management type of planning, identifying, well, what sub-teams are we going to need based on how this problem diagram has shaken out, how we've divided the problem up. And then we want to, this is something we do objectively, is to try to include learning throughout this process. We need learning both to inform people, but we need that atmosphere because it motivates and it catalyzes creativity. We have found that in our experience, and that's exactly what Professor Senji found in these corporations. And then the fourth step is, well, you actually, now you have your plan, you have your teams, you conduct the problem solving effort. Probably the one of the main differences from this approach and traditional problem solving, engineering problem solving, is that we remember we've listed all these solution work units. We're going to initiate all of those events, work unit, those efforts simultaneously. We're doing that because we don't know how one relates to the other. We can't put one before the other and say that's the way they should fit. We don't have that knowledge or ability, and it's not even apropos to these wicked problems. So we start them all simultaneously. So you have these different teams looking at these different options or whatever it is that they're looking at. They're gathering information. They're identifying different options. They're evaluating these options in depth. And then as results start to form, the teams start to integrate these results. Remember, we said there's systems problems. So start to try to integrate results into systems of solution. And as we go, we update the problem diagram and prepare some minutes, ongoing minutes and summary. That's to get the information flow from all the efforts throughout the entire problem solving team. And then we essentially iterate. We put out these reports, maybe bi-monthly or at least bi-quarterly. And this effort continues. Gather more information, maybe add initial options to the effort. And again, go through these evaluations, integration, and we essentially, this is the iterative nature. We just keep doing this until we finally come up with an integrated solution to this problem. How many iterations it takes, we don't know. But that's the way we handle the fact that we're starting working on all these solution work elements simultaneously. Now, throughout this process, and this is key to facilitators, we have to be sensitive to good ideas. And we have found this in our work, that a good idea can come from anybody, anytime. We need to be sensitive to that, and we need to encourage everybody to be sensitive to that. One thing we found is that there can be considerable confusion in this process. When you start everything simultaneously, you start to get all these results and you say, all right, let's integrate them. Well, that's not something you can do instantaneously. It's mind-boggling. So you grab what you can, you pull together what you can, and then you iterate, and you can pull together a little more, a little further. Our mind has this ability to integrate things over time, very complex things over time. So we find that rather than just stop and dwell on some piece of confusion, it's best to just keep going, stick to the schedule, and essentially you'll work your way out of it. It's been described by one of our participants in one of our Army projects as, I see what you're doing. This is controlled chaos. There is an element of chaos built in here, and I don't think you can get it out of it. Then the final step is to prepare final reports. Nothing very unusual about that, really. Professional level report. Peer review is always good to get outside review of it. Our own experience with this is that by the time you've gone through this and you document this and you lay it on the table in front of other people that haven't gone through that, they pretty much accept what you say, because it generally makes good sense. And the fact that you've taken a very thorough, unbiased look at this problem, an honest look at this, stands out. It has credibility. And so then if you're working for the town, well, you present it to the town. If you're working for a corporation, you present it to the corporation or to the government, whoever's is essentially funding your work. Finalize and distribute the report. So, and then the very final step is, well, there may be follow-up, certainly presentations of the results. There may be a need for pilot testing some of the solutions that come out, or pieces of the solution, to be sure that they'll be viable and will function as you anticipate. And the big aspect is, well, we got a solution, now it has to be implemented. And again, the problem-solving team can be really instrumental in carrying over into that implementation phase, which is totally different phase altogether. It'll generally be sponsored by different people than the ones you were initially working for. Okay, well, just wrapping up this overview of the approach, I think the first thing is to bring people together and focus them on this problem. Now, this in itself is kind of a major accomplishment. We want to bring together engineers on this wicked problem approach and focus them on finding a global solution. Well, that's not being done. So there's not going to be any global solution without people working on it. So just bringing the people together and focusing on doing that is part of this approach. Well, that's an enormous first step. And then if you overlay on that, the fact that we've kind of learned how to do this, then you get the other benefits. But the other thing, we say this is an iterative approach, as we've described. It's open in that if you get new information, you're open to changing direction, adding. It's flexible to use whatever tool, whatever knowledge base that needs to be brought to bear can be brought to bear. There's no boundary on that. Overall, we say it's structured, it's proven based on our own experience with it, and it's fact-based. Now, this is as opposed to unstructured, ad hoc, opinion-based problem solving, which I think we all have observed that that's perhaps too often the norm in the political realm as to how problems are solved. So these are really, these are key in describing what we're at with this approach. And we're trying to tap this full human potential. And one way of saying that, what do we mean by that? Well, we're trying to get people to think as hard as they can. We're not trying to make this easy to solve a wicked problem, because it's not easy. In fact, the flip side is the essence. It's extremely difficult, and we're going to have to think as hard as we can if we're going to succeed in solving it. So that's another thing we're trying to accomplish with this tapping the full human potential. So, okay, now we want to get right into this problem diagram that I mentioned. This is the, we went through this, we just went through this, and we mentioned, this is again kind of an overview, but the study goal is what the team will accomplish, the end states overall. These tier 2 are where our knowledge gaps, our barriers that keep us from getting to the study goal. And the tier 3 are really the actions to take to overcome these study needs and knowledge gaps. So it's pretty straightforward, really, in that sense. Now, one thing that we've run into in brainstorming this problem diagram, I guess I used that word casually, but that's where this problem diagram comes from. We brainstorm it. There's nowhere else to go for it. And in doing this brainstorming, I draw an analogy here of a fishing trawler out in the ocean. They're capable of putting down a circular net around a school of fish that they've identified, and then tightening that up to trap the fish. So let's just say we're out in the ocean and, oh, we see a lot of fish jumping right here. There's obviously a concentration of, but then, oh, there's a few over here, and then, oh, way over there, yeah, there's some here. So where should we spread the net? Well, we could do it quicker here, but you know, we don't know that most of the fish may be over here. We have no idea. And so what we suggest in trying to brainstorm this problem diagram is to cast a wide net, to try to get as much of the different aspects of this wicked problem into the effort as possible, because we really don't know where the key factors lie. And if we go through and we find down the road, as we've looked in, well, that's irrelevant, well, we'll throw it out. So it's not like it's locked in concrete. So you could even say, well, it sounds like a shotgun approach. Well, it sort of is, I guess. But we actually, on one of our problem solving teams, this came up, and we used this analogy to convince somebody that, well, maybe we need to consider that. It doesn't sound as, maybe it's not so crazy. So here we go. In terms of this problem that we would like to ask you to work on is the wicked problem of how to obtain the $350 million for the global systems and outreach programs. Certainly this is an example of a wicked problem. It's certainly a wicked problem from Tom and my perspectives. And what we're going to ask you to do now is we'll use this wicked problem throughout this course. And we're talking about developing the plan of how to actually do this. Now, after the course is over, we're going to try to implement the plan. And if some of you would want to stick with us and help us do that, that would be greatly appreciated. But there's no obligation on your part to do that. So this is what we're going to remember here with this non-wicked problem, the more traditional. Usually you can use a series of steps, but with the wicked problem, we can't, and we're probably best off to cast a wide net. So I thought at this point, it would be a good time to take a 5-minute break, let people stretch. And Tom is going to put up the draft wicked problem as a Word document. And he has volunteered as we do the brainstorm to record the ideas that you all come up with. So why don't we take this break, and I will stop the share and Tom will get ready with this diagram of his.
If I could just make one quick comment. So the Global Solutions and Outreach Programs is the 3-year effort that needs funding. And this goes to one of my objectives, and that is to get someone who's going to have a voice at COP26, Conference of Parties in Glasgow in November, to consider this sort of approach in their own nations. We've got to get away from the ad hoc approach. COP26, COP25, and all the rest of them have been portrayed to me, as I read them in the literature, as let's all get together and share our ideas. You know, hey, there's a good idea. Let's try that next year in our nation. Well, that's a lousy way of doing it, in my opinion. Anyway, let's all take a break. 5 minutes. I'm kind of looking at everybody's thumbnail there, Dick, and looks like some people are still taking their break.
Okay,
Give them a little more time,
sure.
and then we'll need to have everybody unmute themselves so they can participate in this brainstorming. But let's give them a little more time. We'll be starting here again in another 2 or 3 minutes once we get most of the people back. You're a little bit ahead of schedule on that break, so I think a 10-minute break is what we're taking, which is going to work out okay. Yeah, it looks like we're getting almost everybody back. Hey, all of you that don't have your videos on, why don't you turn on your videos? I was on a Zoom call once, and we had about 40 people. It was with the AICHE South Texas section. I've been on the executive committee for quite a while, and all I saw were names, and I said, I want to see people. I want to see what you look like. And there you go. and I think the first remark was that they hadn't shaved or something like that. Well, we don't care. All right. I think we're about ready to start, Dick. It looks like almost everybody is back with us. Okay.
Okay, good. Well, let's start here. Now, we start with a study goal and the end state goal. Now, Tom and I came up with this because this really relates to the project and what we're trying to accomplish. So we're putting this out as a straw man, really. And what I'm going to do at the end of this session, whatever Tom records, we're going to send this out to you. And then we're going to ask you to work on this as further as a assignment. So if you have comments on these goals, we would appreciate them. So, but we thought, well, we want to identify the best ways to raise 350 million to execute the U.S. global solutions and outreach programs. That's what we would like to accomplish here in terms of our working on this problem diagram and our planning effort. Just to refresh your mind as to, well, what's the global solutions and outreach programs? the end goal really that we came up with, kind of the strategic objective, is to empower young people to attack this problem of global warming. Starting young people being engineers, economists, scientists, and others, all working together. And start this effort, these programs in the US, with the idea that we'll be able to get participation internationally from other countries. It's primarily an engineering problem-solving effort. We hope with this money to hire some 300 full-time people and some 4,000 part-time people. So we're talking in the US. So it's a massive effort, and it's an empowerment effort to get this going. So that's what we're trying to do with this money. So, and that's really the end state goal, to empower the young people to lead and execute the programs. We want to develop national, regional, and global action plans, and that requires the international involvement for certain, to actually come up with solutions to solve this problem. And we're also interfacing with local efforts, near-term efforts, and supporting them, and that's the outreach piece of it. So those are our two goals. If we can kind of live with them at this point, as a point of departure, we can always alter them in the future if we get comments back. So we want to then start here with the problem elements. And this is the first one, technical. Now, we want to be able to identify key targets for going after this money. And one of the reasons for that is we then want to divide you all up into these teams that look at this particular target versus that. And we figure that's a way that we can organize this effort amongst all of you that are taking the course. So I just put down government dollars as an example of one source that we would probably want to go after or consider to raise this money. Certainly they've got the money. So I'd like to open it up now to the brainstorming on, well, what other categories or targets should we include here in this effort?
Hello, this is Eric. So, for example, Bill Gates or other private sources of that type.
Foundations.
Tom, put that down underneath if you can.
Oh,
You know,
okay.
under government.
Okay.
Right. Well, wait a minute. Eric said rich people essentially, or well,
Well, they're
Yeah,
different.
there's different categories.
Yeah, there are private foundations. There can be family foundations, which Gates might fall under, for example. There may be others who are, I don't know if you've seen, like on PBS, sometimes there are a number of foundations that are very much interested in a similar topic that might be interested in funding, and one would come together, they could come together around that.
okay, those are good ones. So I guess you're saying that would incorporate the Bill Gates would be in there. So
I don't know. PBS type. Maybe they're distinct from private and family. I'm
Some
thinking,
of them specifically family foundations. If you look on GuideStar, GuideStar has all the foundations, and they list the foundations, what they're
Dick,
interested
I'm going to capture some of this good information. I haven't heard of GuideStar. Is that like 2 words?
Yeah, it has a new name now. I'll have to remember what it is, but I've done a lot of research involving.
Okay. I don't want to lose any good information.
now,
There's also the possibility of appealing to corporations.
corporations.
Right.
I wanted to mention, I heard Rick Perry asking just for this kind of help recently in an interview, after the Texas incident. So, politicians, I think, are what constitutes government. Rick Perry is a former director of energy, secretary of energy.
So you're saying that he would be willing to listen?
Yeah, I think he would, based on that television interview I saw.
Okay. Okay.
Would we have to sit in the dark?
Yeah, we got to strike while the iron is hot, huh?
I believe you might make it, I think you wanted to make a distinction, if you don't mind, from a Canadian point of view. I think there's a difference in the States between private foundations and individual billionaires. And the right wing surely knew that. Well, there is Bill Gates, there is Michael Bloomberg. These are individual people. And they really seem to have their heart in the right place.
I agree with you. Anybody else started reading Bill Gates' new book? I started reading that.
Yeah,
I did.
Well, what
So
you need to
private
have-
individuals could be said, maybe, just to distinguish that.
yeah. Why don't you add that, Tom? And, wealthy individuals or whatever.
Oh, okay. That may not have a foundation, just well,
Right.
yeah.
don't forget David Koch.
High net,
Joe.
high net worth individuals. I would say also another opportunity or way to find them would be to look at articles related to discussing, global warming and solutions, whatever.
Hello,
Like-
everything went silent.
Quoted. They have,
Hello.
yeah. They,
Dick,
Hi.
are we touching?
No, we're not finished here, Tom. Just go back to where we
I'm doing
were.
fine. I'm in a
Well,
meeting though.
you
so
know,
this is
like,
not a good time to talk,
Kimberly
and I'm not
mentioned
interested in
articles.
forward.
We got to
Thank
keep
you.
this thing organized so we don't get all confused. So let's just keep brainstorming
Okay.
on these
Okay.
different,
I had somebody come. Okay, I had somebody come to the house. I looked into solar and I don't want a 20-year mortgage. So thank you very much. Goodbye.
How about
Crowdsourcing
since we're
funding.
AICHE, what about a fundraising drive through AICHE, like member donations?
Well, I like your engineering and scientific institutes.
Yeah.
I was going to mention universities also. Yeah, that might be included there.
It's also crowdsourcing.
Crowdsourcing.
Outsourcing. Yeah.
Why not?
I've heard of that. What does that mean?
Oh, GoFundMe or
Oh, that.
There's all kinds of crowdsourcing
Oh, okay. Fund me.
for startup companies, startup institutions, things like that.
Okay.
there's a gap here that would be, I don't know if it's technical or other, that why do you want this money? And also, how do you present that to people? So whatever that gap is, well,
we're not there to gaps yet.
oh, okay.
Yeah, we're just fitting the categories and then we're going to brainstorm what the gaps are.
Oh, I got it. Okay.
Hey, Tom, I'll just put the private equity who are working on social change, climate change and things like that. And even endowments which work on similar social issues. I mean, that may be covered under private foundation. Like organization like environmental defense funds and all those things.
Okay.
This is Mark Friedman. There's a couple of universities that are right here in Texas, one in Houston. There's a brand new, through the University of Houston, there's a brand new school that's headed up by Kurt Watson. And he was the head of some natural resources and climate
committees and whatnot through his years, and he's now the dean of the public school at or the School for Public Policy at the University of Houston. And the Texas Tech actually has a whole school that's devoted to climate change. It's I wrote it down just a little while ago.
So these are details, would you say, Dick, that would help us to sort this out?
Well, the one thing I would suggest that we do here under foundations is just to put in parentheses, private, family, and public, and then we
Okay.
can just have that as one major category. But looking at these as,
Yeah,
these are all examples that we need to consider.
right.
I think we should also have utilities in here because they're the ones that are kind of right there in the moment dealing with issues.
Also, oil and gas companies. Well, we have, okay, you got the corporations there. Right, but specifically, there's about 100 different corporations that are actually funding specific projects on climate change. Yeah, yeah.
And there's also various consortiums that are doing that.
I would like to just ask, under the utilities, there should probably be both power utilities and water utilities.
Okay.
This is Kimberly. I would add associations. There are associations that represent many companies if you're looking at trying to figure out how to get to many at one time.
So, like trade associations you're thinking of?
Like AICAG.
Yes.
Yeah. I've got those under engineering and scientific, but
Well, we've mentioned governments. There's also the U.S. military and foreign governments.
And along those lines, I was thinking the United Nations.
okay. Let's get rid of Rick Perry here. I mean,
Why don't you put
not
military on
literally,
there?
not literally.
Well,
You got John Kerry and you got, I forget what her, Christina, there's another woman, there's a woman that's like a cohort for John Perry.
Christina.
Kerry, Christina, what's her name? Christina McRae?
You're talking about Biden's climate team?
Yes, and but there's two heads. John Kerry is one, and then a woman, I think her name is Christina McRae.
I mean, we do want to get to Biden's climate teams.
Jack Kerry is a climate envoy. We should find out who the Department of Energy head is.
What was Christina's last name? McRae is.
I think it is. I don't remember, but I can look it up really quickly.
Yeah.
There's
Can we
Gina
put that one-
McCarthy.
Can
Gina
that be put under
McCarthy is-
government Oh, there? maybe it's McCarthy.
Gina McCarthy is heading up
Okay.
the coordination of Biden's climate team. Gina McCarthy, she used to be Secretary of the Interior under Biden. She used to be CEO of REI, the outdoor equipment company.
She's the principal one. Okay.
She's
Yes.
the coordinator on the Biden climate team.
Yeah.
Say, Tom, can you move that one up here? Because that's all government.
Yeah.
That way
Okay.
we keep the bigger.
Yeah. That's why you got to tell me what to do. So I barely know what I'm doing.
No, you're doing it good. On this utilities, can't we put that under corporations? I mean, they're all corporations.
Well, no, like there are a lot of water utilities that aren't really corporations. They're owned by municipalities.
I think the reason, Dick, you want to try to pull these together is that we're going to form teams to work on these. We have 30 people. We don't want to have 30 teams. There'll only be one person per team. Is that part of the rationale here, Dick?
Well, it was just to try to keep, similar things in one big bucket. That was all. I mean, whether they're owned by the town, well, anyway, they're,
I think that's part of what you're getting at, isn't it?
yeah,
Pull
yeah.
these together a little bit.
Try to, it just, what's, and then what's coming out here is that these are big categories and there's a lot of different targets within each one of those.
Under government also, Tom, if you'll go to the end, past Biden's climate team, I would put in the TVA.
Okay. Tennessee Valley Authority?
Yes.
Okay.
Under the private equity organizations, this is Paul Ranzetta. Down on the bottom there, you might want to include like venture capitalists, hedge funds, and maybe SPAC organizations.
Okay.
One I can think about is municipal bonds.
Say that again?
Municipal bonds.
Okay.
Oh, bonds, yeah.
That would be under government, probably.
Municipal governments.
Okay.
Like, yeah, for example, Houston is the 4th largest city, and we have a climate change plan as well.
And how about climate change opponents? Find out from them why they oppose it. Give them an opportunity to not only look at the technical impacts, but the social, political, and economic impacts.
Yeah, well, that's a barrier for sure.
But if we have to do a cost-benefit analysis, we need to get their inputs.
Would they fall under social and political or economic rather than technical?
All of those areas are incorporated in their opinion in my brief look.
Well, why don't we, this might be it for our listing then. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We got 9 of them. Do you think that's it for the big categories now?
I got just one more. I just wonder about celebrities. Hollywood likes to put their name on everything, sport figures, whatever.
Yeah.
How about churches?
They're pretty wealthy too.
Yes, churches, I believe, too. Yes, churches.
Okay.
I suggest that you don't just have the way you've got it written, not just celebrities as a bracket behind wealthy individuals, but wealthy individuals includes celebrities.
Right.
So wouldn't that be better in the social political part?
They might give us money.
Yeah.
Nick, how do you think
we're going to, just the way we plan to do this, we're going to reproduce this list under each of these. Under economic, social, political, then we're going to reproduce the list under the tier 3 divisions too.
Why don't you talk about that for a little bit, Dick?
But that's all. But let's just finish this up. If this is a long enough list, then we can stop that now, Tom. And if you want to cut copy and then paste it under each of these categories, then
speak about that just a little bit so that we understand what the distinction is between these various headers here.
Well, I think that the best way is that we can you move that up to the top there, Tom?
Again, right here.
Yeah, because let's well now down to technical. Let's just say technical.
Okay.
So, and then want to put a space under this one.
Well, I can't see what you're just separate here. Is that what you're saying?
You can't see my cursor?
I don't know. No, I can't see your cursor.
Okay, yeah. At the end of under government, put a space there.
Under government, put a space?
Yeah, put a couple spaces. All right, now let's go ahead and start to brainstorm what we can see as technical gaps, technical barriers that we would have to overcome to tap into those kinds of
Politics. Politics
Yeah.
would enter into all of this. And
Well, one is what I mentioned before is a justification to the various government. A description or justification,
Yeah.
like they would ask, why do you want 350 million?
Well, would that be true would that be true for any of these categories?
I think it's true for every category.
Yeah.
You need the reason why they would, there needs to be a compelling reason why all of these groups will be interested.
Sure.
And
Tom?
the reasons they would be interested will be slightly different. There will be some overlap, but there will be distinct.
Well, okay.
Wait a
That makes,
minute, Tom.
go
Wait a
ahead.
minute. Okay. Yes. Why don't you put that in there about we have to have some kind of a justification or whatever your words were on presentation. What? Yeah. Okay.
Something like that.
It'll need to
Right.
be more than an elevator speech.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, anyway.
Elevator speech was a good start.
You know what that means.
Okay, now we skip down one line. We're going to stick with government right now, and we'll stick with other ideas for other technical gaps or barriers.
Well,
Um,
under
as-
technical, you're going to have a problem because part of it is you're going to train young engineers and scientists and economists, et cetera, to get involved in this. So you're going to have a source of them as well as money.
Pardon? What do we need?
If you look at your statement up there, it's you're going to use the money for training global action plans to solve global warming. You're going to support local efforts, so you're going to have to get them involved somehow.
Well, we're trying to find out, get the money. That's what we're focusing on. We're not, that's what we're not executing the project now. We're focusing on just getting the money.
then it really ought to be public-private partnerships. I mean, which gets everybody involved, not just one group, which is the biggest problem with government is that, basically they feel like they want to do it all, and without public partnerships, and so we end up with this divided community.
Okay.
There's one other thing that should be considered. When I started looking up some information to find out about funding, and there was a big, I think I looked under foundations and sponsorships or grants, and there was a long list of different organizations that got grants for different types of climate projects. The short story was that the grants ran anywhere from about $10,000 to $10 million, with most of them clustering under $100,000. So I didn't see any kind of grants that were anywhere close to even $100 million, which basically says to me that we're going to need to find multiple sources of funding, because we're going to need to break it up into justifiable portions in order to be able to solicit those funds from a variety of entities. It's not going to be just one organization that's going to say, here, go have a picnic with $350 million. So we're going to have to think about, as we get all this information together and come back and look at it, how do we break it up in a logical way so that we can go to these organizations that sponsor these different things in order to be able to get the total aggregate of 350 million.
Well,
that is part of the background research that you're doing, because when you're doing any kind of fundraising, you'll have what we call the pyramid, and then many, the crowdsourcing might be at the bottom, and then others in the middle, and then whoever's at the top, just based on interest level, based on the amount of money that they have to invest in whatever program or project it is. Yeah.
Well, why don't we come back here to this government continuing to use that as an example. And then what are other barriers to getting this money from the government?
Opposition, people trying to convince the government not to play ball.
Well, there are those who are climate change opponents.
Yeah, and that's in the social political area, is it not?
It can be from technical reasons, like you obsolete all of their investments. That's maybe economic, but it's also if you close down gas too soon, you don't have backups for renewables. There are all sorts of interties there.
Well, it could be for the technical reason that we're unwilling to give up hamburgers.
There are all sorts of things that go from heavily invested to absolutely fanciful.
Okay, why don't we why don't we quit on this one and go down to the economic barriers for government?
I would like to add one more thing because I think it will come up, which is credibility, because we're a kind of a non-entity right now.
That's a good one.
Where do we put that,
That would
Dave?
be technical, I think.
It's just put it down there under technical, Tom.
I think under justification, we're going to also have to have objectives, benefits, and results expected.
No, Tom, not down there. We,
Another bullet point.
Under
Give me a
government,
word
under government.
on this bullet list.
Yeah, they just put in their credibility, right? That's what your intent was, wasn't it, Carol?
Yes.
Okay.
Under justification, I think we're going to need to put at least three major things, which are going to be, what are your objectives? What are the benefits? And what results do you expect to achieve?
We're not trying to draft the justification. We just put it in there as that's a barrier. We would have to do that, right? You can put it in parentheses there.
That's fine. That's all I meant.
Yeah, what did you got? Yeah, put it in parentheses after justification.
I said objectives, benefits, and results expected.
Yeah, good. That's good.
I think that will be more towards solutions, right? Yeah, all those, yeah.
Yeah, in general, people want to know what you're going to do with the money that you.
Money.
So you need a
That's
detailed
what I-
plan too.
All I'm just putting that in as a placeholder to remember that we need that's going to be critical when we get to the detail.
Okay.
Well, I think you should also include economics in here too, because that's a
Well, let's go down to economics now.
I just wanted to say, Dick, that we're approaching the half hour, so we're going to get this in within the 2 hours.
Yeah, we will. We're going to quit this when the time runs out. Now, would you put your put your spaces under government again?
Okay.
Couple spaces. Okay, now we want to brainstorm some of the economic barriers for getting the money with the government.
Well, did we put this up here? Business tax, that's an economic barrier. Should that be down here?
I would say so. But is that all right with you?
That's an economic barrier, okay?
So too many organizations may be competing, say, for example, the Department of Energy programs, Hydrogen Council, or, other programs, they might be competing for the money, so.
I think whether you're a Republican or a Democrat makes a difference.
You're saying competing interests for dollars?
Yeah,
Competing for dollars.
Yes, there's a lot of organizations that are doing the similar kinds of work and that are also competing for the money.
Yeah.
But I think that's understood with all these, right? There's competition for all of these. They only have.
Tom, just stick with what we're doing, Tom, please.
What do you want me to do?
Just type in competition.
Yeah.
Or competing proposals or competition for funding. That's perfect.
I'm just saying that's true for all these, so it's just a blanket for everyone.
It's true.
It's all right, but we're not worrying about that
Okay.
now. We're just focusing on government.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
And we're just brainstorming, so it's whatever you put down is fine. We can
Yeah,
X out things later.
okay,
That's right. Yeah, we wanted to go through for government all of these different categories, so we can get a feel for what we mean by the categories, and this is an example.
yeah.
So you're right on track here. So what about other economic barriers to get money from government?
I think when you deal with the
You
government.
might want to
a lot
know
of special
what
interest.
time frame you're talking about.
Special interest?
Yeah, like in ethanol, it may not have been the greatest ideas, but the farmers wanted to grow
Yeah.
corn.
That's a good, yeah. That's good.
And these are special interests that are already associated with the climate initiatives.
Yeah. Okay. Any others on this one?
Almost always on government grants, the government puts up maybe 80% and you have to have private money or somebody put up the other 20% corporation.
That's a good point. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Must have seed money corresponding to 20%. Is that a good way of saying it?
Typical. That's typical.
Okay.
There's also a high bar.
Government has two roles that we should mention. One is to decide, what to do with known technology. What's best to do? Should we have solar? Should we have geothermal? Whatever. And then there's also with government what to do with research type money. What is fusion worth investing? What type of fusion? Small fusion reactors? Whatever. I don't know.
Well, I think you got that with competition for funding. Those are all just alternate competitions. But you want to put that in there in parentheses, research money as
Basic
opposed
research.
Market effects.
Market what?
Market effects.
Market effects.
Yep.
Okay. All right.
All right, you want to go to the social economics then, and we'll do government under them?
All right.
There's always political opposition to whatever your idea is.
Well, lack of bipartisan agreement.
Yeah.
Lack of political party agreement.
Oh, in one political party?
You might also get some pushback from the, Department of Energy, that you might have competing
Yes.
priorities.
That relates to one I sort of had thought about myself, and that is that if the money goes to the federal government, it'll have to go through an agency. And so there's an issue of what agency you would want this money to go through. And then there's the issue you brought up about the competing agencies.
That's actually one of the biggest problems with 45Q is that it's really being overlooked by the tax department.
Jurisdictional disputes is another word for it.
Yeah.
Good way of saying it.
I didn't catch that. What did
Jurisdictional disputes.
Say that, give me words again.
Jurisdictional disputes.
Turf wars.
Say that again.
Turf
Turf
wars, same thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's a killer. I spent my career with the government, and that was in our face all the time.
We're coming up.
Any others on here?
Regulatory agencies,
Pardon?
regulatory agencies like TCEQ or somebody else, yeah.
I didn't catch that word. What agency did you say?
I'm talking about TCEQ or, EPA.
EPA.
Yeah.
Tom, it is TCEQ, Texas TSM.
Oh, TC. Okay.
I would add that on the political side, one of the challenges or issues or opportunities might be whoever is up for re-election and their constituents.
And we all know that the elections for the House has already started because it's only 2 years away.
Also included in social political is you have a lot of interest groups outside the government that may want the money instead of you getting it.
Or may want to just turn the money off because they say we can't afford it.
Right. There's all sorts of.
There's another group involved in that as well, and that would be lobbyists.
Yeah.
They get paid for, obviously, for for influencing decisions.
TCEQ and EPA, a jurisdictional dispute or something separate? I don't know what that line means.
It should be under here, maybe.
I don't know.
That's an
I think the
example.
jurisdictional disputes kind of captures that. I mean, we're talking government agency under jurisdictional, aren't we? Wasn't that the concept there?
There is always conflicting people until they decide how to split the allocation of money. And,
right.
And that certainly will affect a far wider variety of government agencies when you get into agriculture, when you get into commerce, when you get into all sorts of other things. So it will be a free-for-all.
Well, TCEQ is sort of a dispute between state and national government, and then there's all sorts of branches inside the national government that are.
Yeah.
Nick, we're down to 25 minutes left. Did you want to move on to the next part?
Well, this jurisdictional disputes is you amplified on that. I think you commented that it's going to mean it can result in split funding. In other words, we want 350 million. They'll say, all right, we'll put that up for these, but of course we got to have this agency and that agency all take a piece of it and split the thing all up. And by the time they're done with it, it's gone.
Absolutely. That's the sort of fighting that's going to go on.
So could you add that, Tom, under that jurisdictional disputes, something to the effect about splitting the funding or something like that?
Because that feeds back into the economic side.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah. I've seen jurisdictional or turf wars, really, at least in the Canadian government. It's a fractal. You can't just say it's within one agency. It can be within one department of one agency. It can be within one office. It can be within your desk to the next desk.
It can be,
Never stops.
it can be individual people fighting for their particular viewpoint.
Yeah.
So Dick, I think we really do need to move on.
I think you're right, Tom.
Let me just
I
carry
think
this over.
what we'd like to propose then is that the purpose of this brainstorm was to get a feel for what these different categories mean. What we would like to do at this point is divide you up amongst those. How many categories did we wind up with?
Well, I'm going to put them all up here now.
Okay, wait till you get them in there. We're going to sort of divide the number. We don't know exactly how many are here, maybe 35.
Well, no, we know it's in the participants.
Okay.
Oh my goodness. Ugh. Okay, there they all are. By their numbers, okay?
How many do we have? 1,
2, 4, 6, 8, 10.
That's good.
And
So
we have 28 participants. So that's going to be 2 or 3 people per.
well, let's go with, yeah, we're going to not want anything less than 2, but why don't you go through your list then? We're going to have to limit it to 3. And if we
Okay,
don't,
so the way we're going to do this is we're going to just march down this list of attendees. Some of these people aren't here. And we're going to take a roll call plus decide which of these, when we get to your names, which of these would you like to work on? Now, this is a random, Ken, if he's here, I don't want him necessarily to be first, so I've got a random function in here. And we're just going to randomize all these and sort them. And that way, because my good friend Harry Windsor would be dead last, he would get the last. And I don't want Harry to get last choice.
Tom, could I recommend a couple of these sources be deleted as being doubtful as contributing much, if any, money, and that would be churches and crowdsourcing?
Okay.
Well,
I disagree. I think churches is a very good one. I think that's something that I think that's a very unique group from which to find out how they see climate change. So I think
I think the Mormons might be especially interested in that.
The Catholics have a large effort growing.
We need to get started on this, Dick.
okay, let's press on. Just go through your list and people sign up.
Lillian, are you on the call? No. Meredith, are you on the call?
Are you going to check something that says they're not here or do something?
Well, if this is blank, they're not here.
I got you. Okay.
Mike Gentlecore.
I'm here.
Okay, you get the first pick. Which team do you want to work on?
Government. First row.
Okay, I'll put a 1 in there. These have to keep matching so we keep everything straight. Glenn Carlson. I saw Glenn. Unmute yourself, Glenn. Oh, he must have dropped off. Well, Carol.
How about trade associations?
Okay, Ron.
Two choices. Institutes.
Klaus.
Yeah, I would pick trade associations, but I mean, honestly, I'm struggling to understand what message we are tailoring here. I mean, when we approach these groups, what is the deliverable, or what value are we proposing?
So we're trying to get funding for a 3-year United States Global Solutions and Outreach Programs. The end result of that would be to determine the most viable paths forward in a regimented way rather than the ad hoc way that we're, the public expresses views and the politicians bow to their views. That's what we're trying to do. We want to do that work.
Okay.
We need to incorporate.
Daryl, are you still here?
Yes?
Daryl?
Oh, sorry. I said
Oh, sorry. Daryl Smith. No. Alberto. No. Eric.
Foundations.
Steve.
Yeah, I was going to say foundations also.
Well, when we hit, oh, wait a minute, when we hit, when we hit 2, we're done because we got so many.
Yeah.
So foundations is filled up. Okay. We're not going to take any more for that one.
Trade associations too. I have 2.
Who was that?
Trade associations have 2 also.
Oh, very good. Oh, I'm glad that there are people keeping me honest here. Not here, Balaji?
Corporations.
Corporations. Sheila Denzel.
Churches.
Churches. Oh, if I could type. And the guy that was going to be last place, but now he's not, Harry.
I'll go governments, I guess.
We got to, oh, yeah.
No, yeah, he gets the second one there.
Yep.
All right, Martin Naylor, are you here? Chris DeLuca?
Yeah, I'm here. I'll go crowdsourcing, Tom.
Crowdsourcing. I happen to know Chris from my Saudi Aramco days. I'm glad that he's with us there. Go, Paul.
Private equity.
Private equity. Okay, I'm going to do a screen split so we can roll this up here. Who's next? Zach Jacobson.
Well, I would go for individuals. I named them. I'd stay with them. I probably would end up with a somewhat more targeted, less vague deliverable. Going to a wealthy individual saying, let's go with a 3-year program for global outreach. I can imagine Bill Gates yawning at that.
I was doing all kinds of Excel stuff while you were talking. Which one did you pick?
Oh, I had a very intelligent thing to say. I'll forget it now. Individuals.
Wealthy people.
Wealthy individuals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wealthy individuals. My caveat is I would approach with a different deliverable.
Oh, okay. Are those numbers are still matching? Okay, Kimberly. I know
She had to leave early.
Oh, she had to leave. Oh, Mark.
Universities.
Paul Ranzetta.
I think I'll go with universities also.
Okay, that one's done. Kristen.
I guess churches.
Churches. And Paul, comment? Are you there, Paul? I know you were there earlier.
Yeah, he was there earlier. Oh, he's muted.
Oh, he's muted?
Churches.
Churches. Churches is taken.
I guess we could have 6 of them can have 3 people there, right?
No, we got
So we
to
have
try to keep
26.
at least 2 in each one, so.
Well, we got 26. I guess we could have gone. Did we go up in numbers? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Okay, I think we can go up to 3.
Okay.
Okay. So these other ones are open if anybody wants one. I'm sorry, Paul, you said churches?
Yes.
Okay. And Russell?
Put me down for crowdsourcing.
Okay, Alex? No. Antonio? John Henry?
I would do government.
Okay. Alex Canara? I'm going to be disappointed if he isn't here. David Merchant?
Universities?
Universities. Larry?
I'll try corporations.
Bill Black?
I guess I'll go for institutes.
Okay. And I don't, Pavel's probably not here. I don't think he's here. Pippa? Pippa, by the way, is in the UK. Guess she's not here. Michael? No.
Hey, Tom, can I change? This is
Who's
Paul
this? Oh, this is Paul. Okay, Paul.
Ranzetta.
Yep.
Can I do wealthy individuals instead?
Okay. And you were, what did you have before?
Universities.
Let's see how yeah, we're still even on the totals. Okay. Michael Garrick. Ken.
Institutes, please.
Institutes. Joe Bain? No. Moses? No. Sam Goodman? Dave Solarski? Archie?
Hello. Well, this is a wonderful group of very competent people, but I'm afraid this objective is a little too ill-defined for me to put much effort in on. I'm afraid it's a little bit of a exercise in futility, as I understand it right now. So I would decline to participate. But thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, okay. No.
I'm with Archie in that. I'm recommending we go to individuals with a much more focused deliverable. Yes.
That was.
I know
That was Zach's
there's
topic.
A challenge with focus, but the whole point of this is training. So this, in my mind, this is a learning exercise. So what it's kind of learning the process.
Okay.
It's a 6-week experiment to start with.
So was that you, Zach? That was you were.
I was the one who said I think it ought to be a more focused deliverable, along with Archie.
Right now,
Here's Zach.
Right now, the issue is information gathering. It's not trying to deliver a complete proposal to ask for money. All we need to do is find out what are the institutions, what are the places, what are the organizations that have grants available, and what's the process for being able to solicit a grant. So that's the only information that we need, and that's very specific. But that at this stage of the game, that's all we want. We're not going to go and be asking Bill Gates for $350 million right now.
Yeah, I thought I clarified that at the beginning. We're coming up with a plan and we're using this as an example to learn the process. When a course is over, if some of you want to help and actually implement the plan, that'll be great, but there's no obligation and that's not what is part of the course. So in any event, we're working on a problem diagram at this point. That's the whole issue here in the exercise. I wonder if we could get somebody, because we only have one in the private equity. Could we get one of the people that's.
I'm not in the list, so
Okay, Tom.
I'll jump in there.
Okay, great.
So, Zach, did you want to stay with what you had put down here, or did you?
Oh, yeah,
You'll stay with that?
I'll stay with it.
Okay. All right. Who did we miss? I'm not going to run through all these blank names. Who did we miss in the roll call?
Tom, I had to step out. I'll put me down for corporations.
Corporations.
Corporations for 3.
Yeah. Who else did we miss?
Oh, you put it wealthy. He meant corporations.
Corporations.
Oh. Oh yeah, there. Sorry.
Good catch.
Who else did we miss? All right, Dick.
Okay, Tom, if you want to take that down, then I'll wrap it up.
Yeah. Okay. We got 8 minutes.
Okay, we'll be fine. The trouble is that something comes down on my screen and I can't get it transferred over to the.
Well, I can see your screen.
All right. Okay, well, in any event, we'll just go with this because you can all read it. Oh, wait a minute. Okay. Now, okay, yeah, we're up to the end here on the student assignments. As we said at the beginning, this requires participation. So I'm going to send you out a review article 9 colleagues wrote on our wicked problem approach in 2000, and I'll send it to you by email. I'm going to ask you if you will read this. It gives you more background on it, and it's just more information to look at this process and see what we actually did on those projects. The other really important piece of the work is that we're going to send you out in Word form the notes that Tom took, this draft problem diagram. And what I would like to ask you to do is that for each team, just for your team area that you selected, to go ahead through the 6 categories on the problem diagram and brainstorm what you think ought to be under those categories. And although we did this for government, the government team ought to, take what's there as a starting point, but go ahead and, do the same exercise, refine it, come up with what you think. So this is going to flesh out this problem diagram. And I would like to ask you to then send these results for each team back to Tom and I by March 4th. So that gives you about a week. We will consolidate them, all that input into the one problem diagram, and we'll be discussing that next time. The other thing I'd like to ask you to do is to just, each of you, to look through the slides, again, just to reinforce what we went over, to gain your understanding. And I do have a sheet with a few very simple review questions. If you would just look at that and answer the review questions, which we're not going to test or score them. It's just, again, to try to reinforce what we're doing. We're going to do that after each session, and we'll go over the answers at the next session. So that's what I'd like to ask you to do. The key really will be to meet as a group. You have to set it up as your own group, own little Zoom meeting to do this brainstorming and work on the problem diagram. As far as the next session, well, we'll review that diagram. We're going to go into the project management and planning phases using that as a starting point. Okay, that wraps it up, Tom.
One question,
Yes.
are you going to send out emails for each of the teams?
I'm going to send out emails to each individual.
But then how will we work with each other?
Pardon?
Yeah,
We need email addresses.
Well,
we
we'll
will
send, we're going to send out the listing of the people and their email addresses to you. And from Tom's diagram, let's see. Well, yes, and that'll have on there which team each individual selected too. We'll send out what Tom just had up, that spreadsheet with the people and the teams on it.
Yeah, one of the columns in that spreadsheet were the email addresses of everyone. It was just hidden columns, so.
Great.
Please
Bob,
send
how
out,
much, about how
please-
much time do you picture a team working on this?
I would think it'd be probably an hour would do it in terms of your brainstorming session.
I tend to agree. Brainstorming sessions sort of die out after about an hour.
Yeah. This is the review articles. I don't know how long it'll take you to read it. It's fairly long. It's the only long thing we're going to ask you to read, but you can read as much as you like.
So by the way, there were others who had registered who had conflicts today, so they will most likely join us in the next session. So, all right. Thank you very much for attending.
Can you send out the Zoom chat notes also? There's a lot of valuable.
Yes. Oh, I'm glad you mentioned that. Yes. Oh, boy. Well, I'm going to stop the recording now and then.
Tom, I sent you that. I copied and sent it to you.